Hey guys, Benson here at System Vlogs, and welcome to the first episode of History What Ifs. Sit back, grab a snack, grab a drink, kick your feet up, most importantly, have fun. Maybe grab a notebook, take down some notes if you're that interested in this sort of thing. Hopefully you are, because I know I am. So of course, hit the bell notification to get up to date with everything going on this channel. If you want to check out my main channel, it's a place that's linked down below, along with my website, a donation link if you can, willing, and are able to, and of course TikTok, Instagram, Rizzo, and Twitter for your lovely faces to enjoy. Let's get into the main segment then, shall we? Alexander the Great, Alexander the Invincible, Alexander the Conqueror, perhaps the greatest military general to have ever existed. He conquered a land empire, more than 5 times his own little Macedonian kingdom in the northern hills of Greece, in under 10 years. Not only that, he expanded across to conquer parts of India, and his empire will forever live on in legend. But what if he did not die in the great city of Babylon? What if he had lived? Let's explore that little note of history. So, everyone knows he conquered Persia in 10 years. Few people know he conquered parts of northern India in that span as well. And the day he died was when he had returned from his Indian conquests. Could he have held such an empire together with all the cultural, racial, and economic problems such an empire would have? Well, my answer is yes. And here's how. On his return to Babylon from India, there were several problems he recognized at the time. People always talk about Alexander as a military leader, a brilliant military strategist, but he was also a very, very clever administrator. He wasn't an idiot. He wasn't a fool, plagued by arrogances you would see in British administrations and Roman and other empires that would follow after him. He understood that he had conquered loads of different peoples, loads of different sets of people that have different, problems, different ideas, different gods, different religions. I understood that the best way to administer them on that sort of level, on that diverse level, was through acceptance, acknowledgement, and integration. And you can see evidences of him trying to do that. Once he gets back to Babylon, he sits down and he like I said, he begins to start out his administration. Obviously, he dies before it can fully come together, and that's why when he dies, the empire falls apart. Not only did he not nominate a successor, he didn't think he was going to die, but he also didn't. The administrative ideas he had in place to even keep the empire together on that foundation level hadn't been implemented yet. But his ideas were that yes, the Greek Hellenic, culture and religion, the idea of the Olympic gods and the Olympians was, yes, it was the main culture and it was the promoted culture. But all other religions were accepted, and you see this in Egypt. When he conquers Egypt, he's received as a hero and as a protector. And the Egyptian way of viewing things, the Egyptian gods and stuff, they're priests, they're placated. Under Persian rule, they were ostracized, hunted down, murdered or executed for heresy against the Persian culture. But under Alexander, the Hellenic culture was promoted. It was the culture that you were supposed to believe in and follow as a part of. And certainly, as you see, from Cleopatra and her line, the rulers of Egypt do become Greek, more or less. They are Greek, and they believe in Greek ways, and they have Greek cultures mixed in with Egyptian cultures. But that's the key, they're mixed in. They're not replacing Egyptian cultures, they mix it with it. And he understood that. That's the best way to not have uprisings, not have resentment against his rule and against his administration. You also see it later on where He has 30,000 Persian young recruits that he's going to bring into the Macedonian army, into his empire's army, and he has them not taught. He has them not taught in the Persian way, as was expected. He has them brought to Macedonian teachers and Greek teachers to teach them that style of fighting, that style of military administration, that style of military strategy, to bring them in line with his. I mean, because theoretically, he's the one going to be leading these conquests. There's no point them understanding Persian maneuvers and the Persian philosophy and Persian idea of fighting if he's Hellenic, he's Greek, kind of, and he's leading them with those philosophies and those ideas in mind. It's not going to work, or it's not going to work as well. And he's the invincible Alexander. He needs his army to work well. He needs his army to follow his orders and be able to think for itself in style with his line of thinking. To become a unit. Not just individual units, but an entire unit, an entire force that cannot be beaten. And the only way to do that is to integrate the cultures. To teach them their ways. And this was resented, in fact, by other Macedonians, by other leaders, even close advisors to him resented this fact because they were racist. And they were, bigots. They didn't believe that, the Persians, their enemies for so long, should be allowed to understand how they were basically defeated, But Alexander, the key difference between Alexander and future leaders and past leaders is that he understood integration. And as a military example, that sort of example of administration has always been my philosophy as well. If I was to be in the military, especially when I'm playing certain games that have that sort of mechanics in, I always try and integrate cultures because I know it works better than subjugating cultures. In games, it's easy to subjugate a culture, but there is a penalty for it, but it's not as impactful as it would actually be. Imagine one day, you've been conquered, okay? Say you didn't even fight in the army, you didn't do nothing like that. You've been conquered, there's new people speaking new languages around you, telling you what to do. That's already scary enough. Now imagine they're telling you, you have to do this and that, and you can't do what you did yesterday anymore. And not only can't you do what you did yesterday, if you do what you did yesterday, you're going to be beaten or killed for it. You're not going to like that. You're not going to like that at all. But if these strange people come to you and tell you that we're going to teach you these ways, but we're not saying you can't do what you want to do anymore, you're not saying you can't do what you did yesterday, you're going to be a bit more accepting of that fact. Yes, you might still resent being conquered because you might have lost people, lost families, friends, and stuff like that. But the key difference is if they don't try and take away your identity, now you can't hate them as much. There's a difference. So on administration, on a cultural level, he could have made his empire work. Now, actual administration. Could he have controlled himself, that empire? You're talking an empire that spans from Macedonia, which is north of Greece, down across the Mediterranean to Egypt, and across Asia Minor all the way to India. How could he make this work? Well, Alexander took a two-pronged idea to that. He separated military command and economic administration, civil administration, from each other. And the way he did this was again through integration. He would have local leaders, people from the area, be in charge of civil administration. The people that So the face you would see every day. For example, like I said, if you were suddenly conquered and you're being told what to do by someone who doesn't even really speak your language, has a strange accent, looks different than you, you're not going to be, very adhering to that. But if someone who looks like you, speaks like you, understands you, is telling you what to do, you're more likely to listen. Alexander understood that, and that's why local people from the region, were in charge of civil administration. But Alexander also knew that he couldn't necessarily have people gaining too much power, which is why he split it. That way someone can't accumulate all the wealth and military might of an area and use it against him to try and have an uprising. Not only that, but he also knew that the people being conquered are obviously not going to be happy. Even if you install a governor from that area, he might be open to the idea of rebellion if he's the one who remains in power. So he splits the military command away from that and away from that culture. It was normally Macedonians or Greeks who were in charge of military garrisons in the area. Again, an example in Egypt, when he founds the city of Alexandria, the garrison is by a Macedonian commander. But the mayor or thingy is Egyptian. And again, in Egypt, he splits Egypt into 4 different areas. And in each area, you have a military and a civil administrator. Military commander, civil administrator. Civil administration is Egyptian. Military commander is Macedonian. So you can already see he's not only is he splitting the commander of an area, he's playing them off against each other. There's not just one civil administrator of Egypt, there's 4. There's not just one military commander of Egypt, there's 4. So if one tries to be disloyal, he's potentially got 3 loyal ones to fight for him until he can come over and deal with it. Because, he's big bad Alexander. He comes over and deals with shit himself. But you see the difference there. And again, even in India, when he conquers a place, he has the leader be someone who is Indian, but he has the commander, the garrison leader, be Macedonian. He leaves back behind Macedonians. So again, looking at it and seeing how he played people off against each other and how he separated power to mitigate the idea of rebellion and the risk of rebellion, it's plausible to believe that Alexander's empire could have survived not only until his death, which, if you look at the average lifespan of a noble in those times, you're looking at 60, 70 perhaps in some cases, but let's be more reasonable of that time, 40, 50, so another 20 years until his death at least. It could certainly last that long. And should he have children or nominated a proper successor, and they kept that in place, it is plausible to think that his empire may have lasted as long as the Roman Empire did. And in fact, could Rome have even risen? But we'll get onto that in the next part of this video. Let's continue with the line of his administration now. So we know how he dealt with cultural differences. We know how he dealt with racial differences. We know how he dealt with religious differences. We know how he had administered his empire and how all these things together could have helped it last another 20 years and beyond that. Could he have defended it? Now that is the key. You're talking about a huge vast of land. And let's not forget that there's still nomads. The Mongols are not big, but there's still nomads and bandits and all these sort of things in the areas. Could he have successfully defended an empire that size? Well, again, the answer is yes. Alexander never took, once he conquered Persia, once he began his Persian conquest in earnest, once he defeated Egypt and he'd gone to proper into Asia Minor, he never ever once took more men than that could defend his area. The local garrisons were always well equipped and always, suitable for whatever they were defending. And again, when you split the different military commanders, the military commanders can focus on their one area. For example, if I was left in charge of Egypt, I've got to worry about so much. I've got to worry about the entire of Egypt. But if I'm left as the military commander of Egypt, I only have to worry about defending Egypt. But it's still a lot to defend. I've got to think about all these borders and all these different things. But if I'm just the military commander of, say, Alexandria and the Alexandria area, I don't have to think about Alexandria. I can focus. So that split and the splitting of areas allows a better focus. Maybe a smaller garrison, but it allows better focus and a better placed garrison to defend the borders. So with this administrative style in place, it's quite possible he could have well defended his empire. The only places he really have to worry about is India, for being newly conquered. And it's not quite known if Alexander knew what was going on in India further past the Delta, further into the Deccan, past Ganesh. It's not well known if he knew about that or knew about the political and social standings of empires and kingdoms down there at the time. Obviously, we know about nomads in the area, where Bactrians or Far East on the Silk Road, going to on the far reaches of Iran and stuff. But they're the only places you have to really worry about. And if that's the case, he's good, theoretically, right? Let's go on to the more important subject. Where would his next conquests lie? I'm sure you're all dying to hear about that. Well, his Indian campaign was only halted because his men didn't want to march any further in the tropics. He was going to have to change his military, style perhaps in India. He pulled off some amazing feats again in India, again being undefeated, again swift and decisive conquests. Could he continue that? It's probably yes. Could he hold it? I'm not sure about that. You're talking about a lot of land. India is huge. You don't realize how big India is an entire subcontinent. It's colossal. It's as big as China almost. It is ridiculous how big that country is. To control all of that in them times is a lot of work. It would take a lot of work. I just said Alexander's empire could survive with that administration process. But could he defend it if he stretches it all the way to the tip of India? I don't know about that. He wanted to go back. For certain, if he didn't die at Babylon, Alexander the Great would have gone back to India. He's not looking west. He's not looking to the likes of the Italian peninsula or places like Carthage. He's not looking there. He's looking east. Now, personally, I think that was a poor decision. But again, Alexander doesn't know what's east. Perhaps the allure of adventure is what drives him to go east and go, southeast into India. And I'm not saying he couldn't conquer it. Victory after victory probably would have followed that army no matter where it went, as long as he commanded it. But I'm not sure he could have held India. I'll be honest there. That might have been a stretch too far for them sort of times. And it's not necessarily the problem of administration or defense, or defense of people defending. It's communication. You're stretching those communication lines ridiculously far. And the only reason Rome was able to administer its empire that far, eventually Rome couldn't. It expanded too far. It couldn't protect and administer that empire. One of the reasons is its stretch. And the only reason it was able to do so for even that short period of 100 years or so, where it was at its full height and still at its economic and military height, was because of roads. The Greeks hadn't come up with that yet. Roads were invented by Rome, more or less. So that trade network would have to be in place in order to do that, which would take a big invention by some Greek or Macedonian or someone in that time period, and bring it to Alexander's notice and him authorize this project of roads. And who knows, maybe all roads will have led to Pella, so to Rome. And that's another thing. The capital, being Pella, all the way in Macedonia, was would be very far from anywhere in India. If Alexander was going to move his capital, I don't know. So, yeah, to answer that question on could he conquer India? Yes. Could he hold India? I don't think so. Now, could Rome have risen in the shadow of the Macedonian Empire? Because let's not call it Alexander's Empire. By the time Rome rises, Alexander's already dead, and even in this scenario where we're talking about what if he had lived, he would have died from old age or whatever by that time. Let's say his empire is holding together, even if it's got India or not. Let's say it's holding together. It's a solid empire spanning from Macedonia to Egypt all the way across to India, even to the tip. Let's just say that. That's the scenario we've got here. It's got to be forking out top dollar here to administer that empire, first of all. Second of all, it's got to be forking out a lot of people to protect this empire. let's say Rome rises. Now, this is on the flip side. Let's go into actually what actually happened to explain what could happen here. Rome rises, and Rome only conquers Greece because of Macedonia. The Macedonian kings, were controlling the Greeks and financing the Carthaginians against the Romans. Okay? And that's why the Romans went across and conquered Greece. They didn't conquer Greece because they wanted to be conquerors. They conquered Greece out of vengeance and necessity to protect themselves. Is actually what happened in Rome's case. So this is on the flip side. Now, Macedonia is the big empire. Rome's the little jumpstart. Or upstart, whatever you want to call them. I don't know if there would have been a problem. Everyone thinks Rome's these big conquerors, but at that actual time period, Rome only conquered Italy. And again, their conquests are only to protect themselves. They're the ones who are attacked. Yes, they see opportunity of conquest and power, but they're the ones who are actually attacked. So let's say all that happens and Italy unifies under Rome. Okay? Let's say Rome goes to war with Carthage again. It all depends on who Macedon sides with. Does it side with the traders or the kingdom or the republic? It really does depend on that. And I'm not sure, without knowing who the leader was or what the policy would be at the time, there's no way of saying whether they would have got involved with the Carthaginians or on the side of the Romans or involved at all. They could have just stayed out of it. Now, if they stay out of it, Carthage still loses. Remember, and then they lost with Macedon's help anyway. So without them, they lose. Let's say they lose. Rome tortures Carthage, and all that happens, and all that happens, and when that happens, now you might see that Macedonian Empire having to get involved because Rome now is becoming an empire. Once it beats Carthage, it basically has all westward to look at. It can't look east because the Macedonian Empire is too big, it's there. But now you're looking at maybe Macedonian Empire or whoever's in charge of that empire might start to have seen the Romans as a threat and took that personally. And they may wake up one day and choose violence. Who would win in a war like that? Well, the battle tactics, it depends. If like what happens, the battle tactics of the Macedonian Empire, let's look at history. The battle tactics of the Macedonian kingdom doesn't change. They still do the phalanx. So it's a safe bet to say the Macedonian Empire still does the phalanx. Still uses them old tactics, whereas Rome's new tactics. It depends on the day. Rome tactics beat Macedonian tactics. In a head-to-head fight on even numbers, the Romans win. But it's the case of would they have the even numbers? Could the Roman army at the time beat a larger army than itself? Because if you've got an empire the size that's got India and all that, so it's pulling millions of people across, hundreds of thousands in a war like that. I'm saying it would go one or two ways. Either it's almost like when Japan attacked America. It would have to be the fledgling Roman Empire has to get to Pella before they can call reserves up from Asia Minor, up from Egypt, and up from India. I'm saying the first conflict, the first set of battles would go Rome's way. Once the Egyptians came across, I'm still saying most likely to go Rome's way. And now it's a case of a race against time. Can Rome conquer or defeat the bulk of their armies in Greece, Egypt, and Macedonia before the reserves from India and Asia Minor get there? Once the reserves get there, it's over for Rome. They're done out here. There's too many troops. They're losing that fight. So it would be a case of time. So in that regard of Rome versus the Macedonian Empire, I'm calling it on time. If the troops get there, Rome loses. If they get there first, they can force a surrender that potential. I don't know what Rome would even try and enforce here, because what are you going to enforce here? It all depends on another thing, it depends on if the Macedonian ruler dies or not. You know, if he's smart and he's in that sort of a situation, he would leave, go to his auxiliaries, and accept a treaty that, say, I don't know, some sort of monetary treaty. You know, lots of money goes to Rome and stuff like that. It's a humiliation, but it's better than his empire being broken up or anything like that. I'm saying that Rome would probably ask for money in that sort of thing. They wouldn't be able to ask for anything else in that sort of situation, so that's what would happen there. And the two empires would probably go for a head-to-head fight sooner or later again. And at that point, I don't think the Macedonian ruler would make the same mistake, and it'd probably go Macedon's way, I'd say. But again, it depends. So, again, another iffy answer on that one, but it all depends. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the first History What Ifs. Comment how you enjoyed the explanation and the little segments it will split up into. And if you agree with what I said, or if you disagree. You know, if you've done more research and you say, no, it wouldn't have lasted, or this and that would have happened. You know, maybe you know more than me. You know, you probably do. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. Hit the bell notification to keep up to date with not only this series, but this channel as well. Of course, you can check out my main channel, Something Plays, down below, along with my website, a donation you can, willing and able to, and of course, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, for lovely faces to enjoy. And obviously, there's teasers on there for all these videos. I'm gonna love you and leave you. Ponder the thought of Alexander the Great. What if he lived? And peace.